Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're just joining us, one of the things we just told folks was, one of the things we do with our students as we begin sessions is just have music and things to do. Hey, Kimberly, good to see you. I see y'all. Good to see so many faces. Gina, so good to see you.
Hey.
Welcome, welcome. Are y'all moving? All right, we're going to give one more minute. We know folks are still coming in. This artist is Blax, Blaxx, and titled Pass Out. And yep, this is soca. So yeah, so awesome. Juwan, you want to go ahead and share?
No problem.
Awesome. Welcome, Antoinette.
Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone. We are so excited to have you here. My name is Antoinette Newsome. I'm the McNair Scholars Program Coordinator. And so today we will be talking about the shift from in-person to virtual. And this program is sponsored by the UMBC McNair Scholars Program. We do want to encourage you all, please feel free to put in the chat your institution or change your name with your institution's name there so we can see where we have people coming from. And maybe you all can begin establishing connections. One thing we love to do in our community is to, build relationships and to establish connections. And so we're hoping to do that here. All right, so we can go ahead and get started. So what we're gonna talk about today, we're gonna share a little bit about us, a little bit about UMBC, and then we're going to talk about factors that we've considered when designing our virtual programming, right? So we're going to talk about different programs that we have. We're going to talk about how we were able to utilize the strength of the team, how we established structure, what are the ways in which we were able to maintain community during this shift. And then we're really going to talk a lot about the communication and accountability, as these are two really critical pieces as to what has contributed to our success. And then we are going to have an open discussion at the end. So please feel free to write your questions down. We know that in the registration, we asked what you all were hoping to learn. And so we have designed our presentation to kind of respond to some of those things. But if we have missed something, please feel free to include that in the conversation at the end. We would like to invite you all, if there is a specific question that is super pertinent to what we're describing in the moment, there is a raise your hand feature. So feel free to use that if it's something that you specifically need some clarification on. Otherwise, we'll kind of yield to the end to kind of respond to the remainder of the questions. So that's our agenda for today. And then next we'll introduce ourselves as a group. So again, a little bit about us. I'm Antoinette. I am the McNair Scholars Program Coordinator. I'm actually also a McNair Scholar alum from UNC Chapel Hill. And so that is me. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm also a graduate student, a doctoral student at the University of Maryland, College Park in the Student Affairs Concentration Program. Just entering my second year. Woohoo, yes, that's exciting. And my research interest is in institutional responsibility for the inequitable outcomes of low-income first-generation students of color. And so now I'll yield to the director.
Hello, it's so good to see y'all. I'm just so excited. So many faces and names that I do know, and some who are new to our community. And so, yes, we've already claimed you. You're a part of us now that you joined this webinar. So welcome to the family. I know we have some SSS folks here as well as McNair. So we're so glad to have you with us. I am Michael Hunt. I'm the director of the UMBC McNair Scholars Program. I am also an alum of UMBC, graduating '06. And I am so glad to be back to campus. And also I am a McNair alum as well from UMBC. So trio family all the way. And you'll hear more from me a little later. Zaira?
Hi everyone, I'm Zaira Girala. I am a McNair Scholar and also a McNair Ambassador. I am a fourth year student here at UMBC under the English Communications and Tech track. My research interests are in technology, communication, technical communication, and how directly it impacts minority populations.
Hello everyone, my name is Joya. I am a McNair Scholar and also a McNair Ambassador. Currently a rising senior computer engineering major, and my research interest is in the realm of renewable energy in general. And my pronouns are he. And the last person that we have here is Victoria. She's one of the she's a McNair Scholar and also a McNair Ambassador that helped us with putting together the slideshow and kind of preparing for this virtual seminar in general.
Great.
So again, our institution is the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. We are a four-year public school, medium size, so that's about 11,000 or more students, predominantly white institutions, so EWI, and we have about 50% white students and 45% minority students. The UMBC McNair Scholar Program works on a cohort-based model program. We serve about 30 students and are federally funded.
So before, one of the things we want to do is talk about the factors of this virtual programming. So everyone, I mean, many of us was just thrown into it. It's like, all right, this is how it's going to happen. And we thought it would be just for a month or just for 2 months and 3 months. And now we know we're going to at least be to the end of the year. And to be honest with you, maybe going to the spring semester. So what do we need to sort of focus on in order to have a great experience? And these are all lessons learned from us throughout this time. So we hope that something that we share with you, you'll be able to take back. And we want to hear from you some things that are of interest as well, or things that you're doing that may be even able to strengthen the work that we're doing here. And so talking about utilizing the strength of a team, I'm going to be honest, I recognize that what is most important is having people who can help you realize your goals. And you cannot do it by yourself. This is something we often tell our McNair scholars, that they are not alone in this process. One, they got the McNair family and community, but they're also standing on the shoulders of giants and people who have come before them. And so if you know that to be the case, you're never self-made. You have a community around you. And so that's what the team is for us. We have a community. And so it starts with our professional staff. I am intentional about decision-making not being top down. It really is that horizontal experience where I throw out an idea, they make the idea better, or they say, Hunt, that ain't gonna work. And then we come back to the drawing board. And so that's how it starts with even the professional staff. When Antoinette came, which has been, just be honest, God sent in many ways, she brings different skill sets that I do not possess or that aren't in my wheelhouse. And so we work together. She brings strength, I bring strength. There are areas she needs to grow, there's areas I need to grow. And we talk to each other, engage. So we meet once a week as a professional staff just to talk through. And honestly, over virtual, because we're virtual, I think we meet more often, but less formal. So there's like one formal meeting a week, but we always doing check-ins. So there's never a time she calls, I answer, she texts, I answer. There's conversations, there's communication that is happening with us. And you can only do that when you have trust. And so building a team where it's not just about, for us, it wasn't just about data or trying to push numbers and figure out what's important. No, we care about one another. We want to actually have dinner with each other, right? There is actually conversations that we have that are about our life, our family. There's situations that we both are dealing with in our own families and our own experience. We're both grad students as well, working on our PhD. So oh Lord, we talk about that too. And so there's so much that we do to build trust in community. So I really want you all to think about, what picture does your professional staff have, right? If you are gone, like I was gone for a day because I wasn't feeling well. And I knew that I left it in capable hands. There wasn't no question. She knows how I think. I know how she thinks. And there was no questions. I just stayed home, or we all stayed home, but I wasn't on the computer that day, but I was still able to work from home and take care of some stuff. Why? Because I knew that Antoinette had it taken care of, because there's this trust and communication that happens. And then the next part is student staff. Someone sent me a message, Michael, and I appreciate it. He said, I really Michael sent me, and I'm gonna call it out, Mike, because I know it's a private message, but it makes my point. Mike says, I really like your addition of the McNair ambassadors. Y'all, is intentional. And so thank you, Michael, for calling that out. We knew that we could not do this without recognizing who is actually doing the work. And our student staff, we call them McNair ambassadors. You might know them as the Federal Work Study students. We use Federal Work Study to help fund this aspect. We have money from the grant that we use for student workers as well. But what's important is that they're just not paper pushers. So each of our student staff has a responsibility. So Jawan is our ambassador for student development, and he's developed a lot of forms and a lot of processes. He's also in charge of our S2S, Scholar to Scholar program, where the scholars meet together in small groups and have monthly meetings working together. Zaira, who is here as a summer ambassador, but she does a lot with the social media as well. And so each of them have particular roles that they play. But at the end of the day, we're all working together, and they are part of the team. They're part of the decision making. If I need to ask a question about if we're going to move in a certain way, I go to our student staff and our professional staff. We all meet together once a week. Professional staff and student staff required. So if you're going to be on our staff, you have to be able to make this meeting. And we meet, we hear what they're doing, they share with each other what they're doing. And I want Zaira to talk a little bit more about what it means to be a part of our student staff.
Of course. Hello, everyone. So as part of the student staff, as a McNair ambassador, I'm in a really, really unique role where I get the best of both worlds, and I'm kind of a bridge between scholars and professional staff. I get to meet scholars where they are. So for a lot of the assignments, like for our newsletter that I, as a staff member, got to help make, not only was I helping design that newsletter and pulling it together, there was another component where I was meeting scholars where they were. Part of a lot of our backgrounds as first generation or underrepresented minorities is we face difficult challenges and barriers sometimes, whether that's imposter syndrome, whether we have additional responsibilities and internships, or home responsibilities and summer research. It's a lot. So it was me meeting scholars either through band or through texting or emails or calls, reaching out to them and saying, I want to celebrate you in the newsletter. Like, we want to celebrate you. What are you doing? Or what do you need help with? And it's really getting to be a scholar myself and knowing, oh, I would like if somebody would reach out to me or about this, or I would like if somebody could help me parse through this, but also being part of staff and knowing what we need on our end as far as feedback and anything from our scholars. So that's really something that we found to be really useful. And also team building is having those bridges between scholars and professional staff.
Thank you. And to add to the next part, we then, not only do we have professional staff and student staff, but to make it complete, we've got to keep our scholars. So one, we are intentional about who we choose as scholars. So there's a whole process, application process to get into the community, and even a group interview process. So that's a whole nother webinar that maybe we'll do later on our application process. But we're intentional about the students that we bring to be a part of this community. But that allows us, when we're intentional, we are then able to empower them to be change agents even within the McNair program. And so students are equipped to develop programs, to develop ideas, to bring new things to the table. So give you an example, there was a student this summer who used to work for our office, but this year he is not, Jonathan, rising senior, graduating this year. He knows he wants to do Zoom meetings with undergraduates and grad students and professors at the schools that he's interested in attending, right? And so what he did without our permission, but he has our permission. It's interesting how it works, because he didn't come to us and say, hey, I want to do this. He just put it out there. We have a listserv where all the students are on a listserv. And he said, hey, I'm hosting a Zoom meeting with this professor from University of San Diego. And we're going to be talking about grad school. Here's the information. Here's their bio. He provided bio, and his brother, he even included a picture, y'all. Like, I mean, if you look at what he sent us, I mean, it looks like you would have think we sanctioned it. That's how good it was in his preparation. And he did this 6 and 7 times. I think we just got one yesterday or this morning for another one that's coming up, right? And this is us empowering our students, because what he recognizes is that in order for him to succeed, the community has to succeed. And so so we are working together. So when it's benefiting him, it's also benefiting the community. And so he's created new ideas. That's what we call our scholars to do. And it's not just us. So our team is our professional staff, our student staff, our scholars. And one aspect we didn't put in here is the community of supporters. And that's all the research mentors and the McNair mentors. We have a whole mentoring model that we do where we rethink what mentoring is, and provide students with multiple levels of mentoring, including with this fall, we're introducing a wisdom mentor who is a retired faculty or staff member from UMBC who will be connecting with our rising or graduating seniors, and they will be in a relationship with them, facilitated relationship with them for that final year as they're preparing to become alums of the institution. Next slide.
All right. So in addition to thinking about utilizing the strength of the team, we also had to really reconfigure what structure we wanted to create for this virtual platform, right? And so with establishing structure in this new virtual setting, there were a few things that we had to consider, right? And so we had to think, like, what were things that were going to remain the same, and things that were going to be consistent, and what were some things that were going to change, right? So we had to establish this new foundation for our scholars to really understand how our program would look like, what it would look like moving forward. And in that foundation, we really had to consider ways in which we demonstrated compassion, right? Ways that we exuded understanding, provided flexibility. Like, all of these things were so necessary in shifting to this virtual setting, because we're all experiencing such big change all at the same time, and we have no idea when there's going to be an end in sight, right? So this flexibility and this compassion and understanding has really been infused in all the ways in which we designed the remainder of our program in this space. And so with that being said, as we were planning for the different events, we had to think about the various participation levels, especially during the summer. So almost all of our scholars who applied for a REU, research experience for undergraduates, they got accepted to go somewhere, but due to COVID, some of them had to be canceled, or some of them did go virtual. Otherwise, they all remained with us this summer, right? And so we have students who are a part of the incoming cohort who we need to get acclimated to the program. Then we have students who are returning cohorts who are getting into their research, and what does that experience look like? So we realized that we truly had to cater to the various needs of our students, right? So they have different levels of involvement. And there's an example that will actually be shared a little later that kind of breaks down the various levels of involvement that we have for our students. And the biggest thing with that is that we had to recognize that there's not a one size fits all, right? Our students are experiencing things in different ways. They're experiencing life differently. And so how can we provide them with opportunities that will still allow them to grow and to connect and to build relationships? But what are those things that we need them to do depending on their involvement with us specifically for the summer? So that'll be detailed a little later. And again, if you have questions, please feel free to pause and to ask us. But with all that, in addition to establishing the structure, we had to think about what are going to be some new approaches to maintain this community, right? And so we'll also show in the live setting here what we've done as we've utilized BAN. It's one of our online platforms and an app platform that we've used to kind of help with some of the structure that we've been implementing, as well as what many of us have been using, which is WebEx and Zoom. But with all that, it was important for us to establish these things as consistent for our students so they knew what to expect and that all of us, students and staff, were on the same page. And so with establishing the structure, that leads me to the various ways in which we've been able to maintain community. And so with maintaining community, there are a couple of things that we have kept consistent, right? And so one of the main things that we have done is that we've kept our monthly group gatherings. So this is our McNair family meeting where the entire McNair family of the various cohorts come together once a month. We meet every first Saturday, and that's really an opportunity for us to just see each other's faces, for us to give updates about what we've been experiencing. And in this setting, we actually use a restorative, restorative practices. So we implement this restorative circle where we have a question and it's facilitated in a way where everyone gets an opportunity for their voice to be heard. And so that has been really beneficial. In some ways, it has allowed students to open up. It promotes vulnerability, but then it also promotes this culture of care, right? And we've been able to do that through these monthly gatherings. And then in addition to that, we do have our monthly, we have our SRI summer support. So our Scholar Research Institute, this is for all of our students who are engaging in research this summer. And again, with things being in the virtual setting, we really had to work with faculty mentors and our students to think creatively about what research can look like in this setting. And so we have a group of students going through this experience, and we meet with them as a group weekly, and then we meet with them individually weekly as well. And so this is something that Michael and I do as professional staff members. We alternate though meeting with each student so that they get a different perspective, right? Again, thinking through how are we utilizing the strengths of the team. Advice that I might offer might be different from what he offers. And we asked our students, like, is this approach working for you? We always check in with the changes that we're making and if it's really helpful. And the students actually like the rotating meetings with us as professional staff because it gives them a different perspective on how to approach what they're working on. We've also been doing some senior support groups. So this is for our graduating seniors who are going through the graduate school preparation process. So we meet with them on a bi-weekly basis. This is really their time for them to come together to talk about what parts of the process do they have questions about, what parts do they really kind of need to work through as a group. And oftentimes, Michael and I, we don't really have to answer because the students are answering questions for each other, right? Either their mentor has shared something or they've already experienced it. And then we just kind of fill in, you know, where we see best fit. And even on the off weeks when we don't meet, the seniors still meet, right? Whether it's at that same time on that same day, or whether it's a Saturday and they're taking 2 hours out of their Saturday, again, to keep each other accountable. That's not something that we said that they need to do. It's something that we encourage. And so the students themselves have begun thinking about ways that they can continue to do that as a group. And that's been working really well for them. We also do individual check-ins. And so we meet with some scholars on a more consistent basis because of our summer structure with SRI and other things, but there are some where we might not, right? And so if we see that students haven't like reached out in BAN, or if we haven't heard from them, or if they've submitted assignments and then we see that they're missing stuff, we might give them a call, right? We might give them a text message and we might send them a message or something of that sort. But it's really important for us to kind of keep an eye on who have we heard from and who have we not. I mean, Michael and I talk a lot about, okay, here's an update about this student. Have you heard from this person? And so we're very in tune with what's going on with them, where they are, and then how we can best support them through these individual check-ins. Then we also have our peer-to-peer connections. So we call them scholar-to-scholar pods or S-to-S pods. And this is where we actually have one of our scholars who serves as a S-to-S pod leader. And then they essentially facilitate a smaller group of about 5 to 6 scholars, and they meet once a month, right? This is all about what they need from each other. They get to kind of discuss things that they might not want to share with professional staff, but they rather talk with their peers about. And we're totally okay with that, right? I think this various level of support as a large group and smaller group is really the true benefits of what it means to maintain community and how our scholars are getting their needs met in all these different ways. And then the last thing is just really thinking about informal versus formal interactions. So there are a lot of things built into our structure that are consistent, but then we really realize that like our students like doing things informally, right? It's not like they can pop up in our office or in our conference room and they're linking up and talking. We don't have that luxury anymore. And so really thinking about how to include informal aspects of connections with them in addition to the formal, and having a good balance of both. And there'll be more about how we've done this a little bit later as well.
Hello. So for communication, that's part of maintaining our community, is our ability to remain really, really tight-knit and making sure everyone is on the same page. So we do that through a variety of ways. We do our weekly emails, and in our weekly emails, usually what we'll do is we'll keep it to deadlines, any events that are coming up, as well as any news within the community that we want to share. And a lot of the times we'll use that also to send out forms in case we need our scholars' feedback on something. And we want to hear from them. This is a great place where we like to put reminders, events, making sure everyone's on the same page when we start off our week. Usually it's Monday, so we can kind of stay strong as a community that way. We also use Google Calendar for a lot of our events to make sure everyone's on the same page. This is how we schedule a lot of our events, and we find that it's really accessible for everyone, and it's been working pretty well. So I'm about to give you a brief tour of Box, our Summer 2020 Guide inbox, Band, and Trello, as we've been using them for our program. Can everyone see my screen? Awesome. So this is Box, and we use this predominantly for assignments and communication on what our assignments are. So, for example, each scholar has one of these. They have a personal portfolio. In here are folders for attendance and participation, grad school prep, IDP meetings, orientation and bridge, research, undergraduate process, a variety of things. And the reason we have these folders is to make sure scholars can put assignments in there and tag them and communicate with us and say, so we can all see, the staff can see where they are as far as graduate school prep, or how they are doing in their research and undergraduate process progress. This really just helps us communicate in the space of what long-term goals are. These are kind of a lot of the goals of our program and things we want to make sure that our scholars are developing and keeping track of, and having it here helps us communicate about that, helps everyone be on the same page. So each scholar has one of these and staff have access to it. Just making sure that everyone's on the same page, that scholars can communicate about things they might need help with. And we also created for the summer, a summer participation folder. This has been incredibly helpful in times of COVID, in times of communicating about things that we need to get done. So usually when I give students a tour of Box, or when I'm helping them with assignments, I say, summer participation is your home for the summer, and you need to go to the Summer 2020 Guide, which is like the backbone. It's going to tell you everything you need to know. It's the one-stop shop for what you need to know depending on where you are professionally and academically. As Antoinette mentioned earlier, the McNair Scholars Summer 2020 Guide is our one-stop shop for what students need to do going into summer 2020. So depending on what their status was, whether they were SRI funded, SRI non-funded, all of their scholars, or pre-McNair, they had a page in here that would tell them their monthly requirements, their bi-weekly requirements, and their weekly requirements. So that was pretty much, this is the one-stop shop for every scholar to go and know exactly what they're going to be doing over the course of the summer, depending on what their status is. Again, not one size is going to fit all, so we made lots of different plans for what scholars were going to do based on their standing. So this is one of the really important sheets in the summer participation folder. And the second would be the summer 2020 assignments page. Reason being is this is our track sheet. All scholars have access to this. Again, it's sorted by SRI funded, SRI non-funded. We have all other scholars. And this tracks what assignments are due over here in gray on top of each grid, as well as any deadlines for those assignments or how frequently they need to be turned in. This is really just a lot of what's on the Summer 2020 guide converted into a graph so everyone can see if they're meeting deadlines. All students can check this and not only see are they meeting deadlines, but this is part of our communication and accountability feature where we wanted to make sure that scholars could see everyone. So if they noticed that one of their peers was struggling with assignments or couldn't make certain deadlines, that it really encourages them to touch base with each other and say what's going on and help each other out in that way. So looking at just some of our assignments we have here, some of it's the grad school prep checklist and the virtual grad school visit, both of which are extremely important core parts of our summer activities. So let's go to virtual grad school visit. This is a worksheet that we have our scholars do over the summer. Because of COVID and because a lot of our students can no longer go visit grad schools they'd like, we created this worksheet where they can do it virtually. This is through looking at the school's website and also contacting faculty through the school's website and making sure those connections were still being established even though students couldn't always go in person. The worksheet asks questions about getting started, like basics about the university and any requirements they had for admission. Program components, details about the program at the school that the students were interested in. Faculty, any faculty at the school that the students would be interested in working with. And general considerations, which means reflections on resources the students might need at the school and whether or not they were offered. And we even created a reflection section really to make sure that students were, even though they couldn't go to these schools, they still had time to reflect and see if the schools were a good fit for them and make sure that they still could progress with their graduate search through COVID. So we have a resources list in this folder as well. And this is really, really important as far as for our scholars, we still want them doing professional development. And one way we do that is through providing lists of virtual grad school tours we get a hold of. We also have professional development events that we see, some of them provided by our lovely former ambassador, Jonathan, who sends in so many professional development events or talks with faculty at other schools or institutions. So we include all details here so scholars can have very easy access and make sure we're getting them out there and getting them to their important professional development. So that's kind of the core of our summer participation folder. And this is kind of home base for everyone throughout the summer. It has everything you could need to do all of your assignments, and it's kind of how we communicate as well. For example, if we go into a virtual grad school visit, earlier I mentioned tagging and communicating through that. You'd go into this bottom corner, you could add a staff member, and then make a comment like complete or having trouble with, and denote that so the staff member could then see that comment, be tagged in it in box, and then be able to respond to that student on that assignment and get them the help they need. So that's mostly boxes how we mostly communicate with students for any professional development, as well as assignments they need to do over the summer. Trello is one of our communication features that we use mostly within professional staff. It's a platform that allows you to make lists, and within each list you have cards. Cards are different tasks. So you can custom make your little cards. Sometimes you can include deadlines or include multiple tasks within each card. But really what this allows you to do is everyone in the team sees what every single person is doing, what's in progress, what they might be struggling with, as well as what's done. So everyone in the team can communicate effectively, prioritize what needs to be done. And really it keeps us all on the same page, where sometimes this communication that would happen in person, we translate it into a virtual setting. This is Band. This is what everyone in the program, from staff to scholars, really love using for more day-to-day communications. So it's set up a lot like a social media platform might be set up, where you have features to post. You can post photos. You can use really interesting tools like polls and surveys. And there's also features where you can keep track of everyone through chat threads. You can make chat threads one-on-one with certain scholars. You can make chat threads for staff and scholars only. And really these serve, again, those different points of contact for maintaining community and communication at different levels. There's a lot of serious questions about program requirements and such in the McNair Scholars main chat. And in the Scholars Only chat is a lot of questions that scholars ask between each other to get questions on. We even recently developed a meme chat for humor to get everyone through the rough times that is COVID. And really this, as an ambassador, this has been a really, really important method for making sure for any programming that we do. If I ever need to do an event or schedule something, I know I can go to Band. Usually that's where I can get really good feedback from people on different events that we're having or different programs that we're running. This is also where I go to schedule office hours with students, ask them about what their needs are, as well as what time they want to meet to make sure I can still check in with them if I haven't heard from them in a while. But Band, again, is really where we do a lot of our posts, a lot of our day-to-day communication. We find it's really awesome because it has all these features of posts and chats, and we can get a lot of feedback on events or anything we're planning.
There was a question that came in about, and I think it'd be good for you all to talk about, either Jawan or Zaira, where it says, do you feel Band is more user-friendly and interactive?
Yes. I would personally say that Band was really, really user-friendly and interactive for me, especially somebody who just came in the new cohort. Like, Band was very critical for us to get to know each other, to get to talk to each other, in a really user-friendly way, and one that really encouraged communication. And as a staff member, it really helps me get feedback from other scholars in a way that's a lot more casual, I think, in a lot of ways than like an formal email would be, but it's also a lot more accessible that way.
Go ahead, Jawan.
What I was going to add to that is, so before we started using Band, we were using GroupMe, which was a lot of confusion because you had to kind of have different chat for everything. But with Band, all the chat can be in one place and everybody can get access to it and things like that. So it's been much, much easier.
And let me add that whole process, and Jawan is able to talk on this because he was around the table when we were making the decision. And this wasn't a staff decision. So the staff didn't decide to use Band. We put it to the McNair ambassadors and the orientation leaders. And we met, they sent us YouTube videos. We all were watching them. And during the meeting is when we decided as a group that, okay, let's put Band into action. And if we're going to choose Band, then that means all of you will need to be engaging in it and it not just us as staff using it. And so the reality is, if you remove Antoinette and I even now from the band, it still goes, it still functions, because the scholars are utilizing, as you saw, they have the individual chats and all there. So note that this decision wasn't just something we just said, oh, we're going to use band. No, the students were very much invested, because they sent us, was it Disco? What was the other one?
Discord.
Discord, and some other ones, and this is how we made the decision. All right, let's keep it going, Juwan.
So with accountability, there are many ways that we've tried to kind of do this with the program. The number one thing would be the assignment checklist that Zaira shared a few minutes ago. The spreadsheet that has all the assignment that people have to complete. The other way would be the staff sending out a weekly email on Monday, basically kind of just reminding everyone about deadlines or whatever that's coming up this week, whatever event that's coming up this week that they might be interested in, and things like that. And then the third one is during our McNair family meeting, we usually try to kind of review everything we've been doing to see what ways we can better improve to help the scholars. And when it comes to missing meetings or maybe late assignment extension, there is a form that the scholars can fill out to, just to let the staff know that they will be missing a meeting or something, or maybe they needed an extension and an assignment. And another way they could also do that is kind of just email the staff to let them know. Then the last part again is a peer-to-peer, which is we call it scholar to scholar, and that's just for our scholars to meet with each other, kind of check in with each other, talk about their summer goals, how they're feeling, kind of just check in with each other with everything going virtual and see how everyone is doing. There is an exercise that Mr. Hunt is going to share with you guys, whatever.
You're still on mute.
Thank you. Okay. Antoinette and I have been meeting with scholars a whole lot, and what we've been finding is that they have a lot of things in common and issues and concerns, especially dealing with making this transition to virtual and even grad school preparation. I mean, they just have a lot in common with each other. And what I decided to do was say, you know what, I want to see more activity on band, so that I know that they're talking in their individual small groups around things, but we want them to be engaged in a large group more often, and making sure, as alluded to early, accountability, because they all been talking about we want accountability. Well, if you want accountability, that means you got to be holding each other accountable as well, and not just leave it to the staff to hold you accountable. And so I put together this this email, or this band message more so, to them, and I'm just going to take a moment to read it to you. Hello, everyone. Antoinette and I have had multiple conversations with scholars who are struggling with multiple aspects of their lives and with completing McNair assignments. I really want you all to think about what it means to support each other and to be accountable to one another. So this is what we're going to do. Band is a way in which we remain connected to each scholar and to the community. Within the next 24 hours, I would love to see everyone simply like this comment, or use any of the emoticons. That's it. Now, here is the trick. You all are responsible for each other. So the task is not complete until everyone has responded to the comment with an emojicon. So it is your responsibility to make sure that others have done so. You should be able to see who has read, and this is a great thing about band. You can see who has read the messages and who hasn't, who has responded and who hasn't. So if someone is still missing after 24 hours, the community should know why and be responsive. You all should be supporting each other to make sure that the person either is relaying back to the professional staff their challenges in completing the task, and or you all can give support to them in getting it done. If if this challenge is complete by 10 p.m. tomorrow, I will personally donate $50 to Retriever Essentials. And Retrievers Essential is our campus-wide like food bank and resource center for students, mainly around food, but they help in other aspects as well, supplies, etc. I do this as an example of the fact that you are always responsible for one another. If you notice someone hasn't completed an assignment, check in on them. If you notice that someone is missing from an event, find out why. When you all decide to be a part of McNair, you're committed to being in community with one another. If you don't have each other's telephones numbers, please exchange them. Remember, we together are McNair. Let's let the challenge begin. And even midday, I put a video there, you know, because I noticed half of them had done it. So I'm like, what's going on? And then the chat just started going. And if you notice, I mean, they just kept going. And then it got so good, got so good that I said in the video, I said, I'm going to add another $50 to this. There was a organization called Mikey's Wish Foundation, or have you, where around cancer, people who have families who they support families who have family members that have been diagnosed with cancer. And they were doing a big fundraiser, and one of the owners or the starters of it is a friend of mine. And so I said, you know what, I'm gonna donate $50 to them as well. And so then a student asked, they said, oh, Mr. Hunt, as a community member, how do you feel about donating 50 to me personally? And you notice that gave 39 replies there. And my response to this student in general was, since you asked, consider it done, right? And I'm not going to go through this whole experience, but then even after that, our director decided, our director of the Academic Opportunity Programs, Course Davis, decided to pitch in and match as well. So after all of this, we had $300 donated, and all the students ended up doing it. And it has continued. There's uptake in how many students are engaging with the online. Joanne, you can share back your screen. There's students who have now continued to engage in band even more so than they had previously. So we share this example as sometimes it takes us as staff as giving finances towards it, or finding some way to make them wanting to be more engaged in the community. Finally, oh yes, and that's the risky tax. So one of the students had put, because we were trying to get everyone to check the box, she put that up there to try to get people, you know, to go check it out. And by the deadline, they all had. So we're very proud of them, but also it continues as a reminder that there's a lot of work to be done and that they are doing it together. So I'm going to wrap up with this lessons learned for us. This summer has just been a summer where we started with this, responding with compassion, but Lord knows, that's all we've been doing this summer, is responding with compassion. And that's really the big part, because some of our students have felt guilty and are fearful of showing up. And so we've even asked the ambassadors. The ambassadors have set up office hours to do one-on-one with scholars as well, to help them work through some of their projects and help them to understand how to do some things. There were some technology concerns, and students were just, you know, tense up because they didn't want to disappoint us, and they wanted to be seen as a scholar as well. And so, you know, we've just been responding with compassion. Several of our students have had COVID-19 and or their family members. And so, you know, deadlines have, you know, we've just been working with them throughout the whole process. And that's why we've done creativity, reach with creativity. And what we've been challenged by students, saying they want more interaction. So after all this we just told y'all that we've been doing, they want more. And so part of it was putting it on them. So what do we want and how are we going to do it? Well, they started doing stuff. And so tonight we're watching Hamilton. So there's a group Hamilton watch party that we're, you know, a student decided to put it on band and say, hey, who wants to do this? And we're going to do it. I think that's Ting, who actually is in this with us as well. That's what we're going to do. We're going to watch Hamilton. And then another one sent out something about going hiking. Now they are going hiking. The scholars are going hiking, and I'm going to bless them on their way, and hopefully, remind them to stay socially distanced. But this is something that they love hiking. There's a group of them that say, "Oh, I want to go travel and do this," and so that's what they've been doing. So at the end of the day, we want to make sure we make the main thing the main thing. Relevant research, what was important for this summer for many of our scholars. So all the forums that we have, or connecting in certain ways, if a student wasn't able to do it, we just strip things away to say, okay, have you been able to do this? This is why this is important, but have you gotten to this? And so it allowed us to really make the main thing the main thing. And then finally, relationship building, which also included random outreach to students. So sometimes 8 p.m. at night, I'm reaching out to a student because we ain't heard from them or we ain't seen them. Or there was a student who was actively involved a few weeks ago, but now we don't hear from them now. We've also included them building relationships with their mentors, both present and future. And so we really encourage them to get connected with grad school potential mentors and talking to folks. And we help to coach them through that. And so the lesson learned for us in that is teaching them how to do that, because they at times don't know how do you have those formal relationships through a virtual connection. And so we've just been doing a lot of talking through, and they have been talking together about it as well. Y'all, that's all we got. I know, we talked a lot, and so we did make this a little longer. So we said 4:15 to sort of open it up for questions. So Joanne, you can unshare your screen. Because we're such a small group in this moment, if you want to unmute yourself, you can unmute yourself to ask your questions. You can put it in the chat, but this is now the time for any questions there that we can share, or feedback and or best practices that we didn't list that maybe you're doing. Like, we really want to hear from you all at this point.
And feel free to use the chat function as well, if that's easier for you, if you need to like type a question or something like that.
Hi, Michael and the McNair family. This is Danielle Ireland, representing the Center for Women in Technology and our associated program, Cyber Scholars, T-Site Scholars. Just want to say how much I appreciate you guys holding space for this time for staff, including student staff, to build around this, because it's going to be a long haul. And I know within the CWIT space, we've been trying as a staff team to make sense of this work. And it's just so refreshing. I've got my notes here. I'm excited to follow up about some of the forms y'all are using. But I wanted to just say how insightful it was to know that y'all are using Trello, because we use Trello for our research projects. And just the staff and administrators might, track deliverables on that. But I was just taking screenshots. I'm really, really intrigued by the way that you're using it to help your students track milestones. And we'll be following up with y'all about that as well. I asked a question in the chat about Blackboard Collaborate, because it's our institution's tool for kind of course connected activities. And I know our students are already using we tried to stay within systems that students were already using. And so Blackboard, obviously, all their classes were in there. So I was just curious about whether or not you're getting feedback around, space fatigue, virtual community fatigue, in terms of them having to log into all these different spaces, because that's been our main concern in branching out to some of these other platforms.
I'm going to let Joanne and Zaira at least take a stab at it first, and then I can tell you in general what we're hearing as well.
Personally, with the whole thing being online, it's annoying sitting in front of computer all day long. I definitely understand with the whole fatigue stuff, but with the one thing I've come to realize with the band that we use, basically it's a way for me to kind of like keep in touch with them. Most of the thing that I'm doing on the computer has nothing to do with like the McNair family or other people that are in there. It's either maybe I'm doing stuff for research or maybe things for school. It has absolutely nothing to do with McNair in general. So like whenever I see a notification pop up on my phone or whatever, I always look at it, so that way at least I can take like a mini break from staring at my computer all day long. So I find that helpful in that realm. So I don't know if like that answered the question exactly, but Zara can also talk more about.
So it's definitely a double-edged sword, right? Where sometimes you're logging on to your platform, like you open your laptop, you log into your 8 different, 9 different, 10 different, however many platforms you're on, and you get on and it's overwhelming. But at the same time, I know personally for me, while I'm working, I tend to be on like a smaller number of platforms. And when I get like the chance to just look at a slightly different screen, sometimes it's like refreshing. And for band especially, because I know we have a meme chat now. We get, we also get questions from scholars. And like band is where a lot of like very like cutesy, heartwarming moments within the program happen. It's like refreshing, and I've like there's a positive association with some of those platforms too. So it's definitely a double-edged sword. So both fatigue happens, but it's also refreshing to have that.
That's good.
And so I think what you just heard is that's why I said I love when they go first, because it's saying what we are hearing. And what we try to do though is when we asked about platforms, none of them said collaborate. Right. And so that's why I said we started with the students. We didn't start with what we think you all will want to use. We said, what platform do you think we should utilize? We were using GroupMe. We have, the university has these things. Y'all are using Collaborate. But what are you? And then that's when they started finding stuff and sending stuff. Like I said, Discord, I didn't even know that existed. And so part of it is when they have a connectedness, there's a
buy-in. Yeah, there's
buy-in. Yes.
Yes.
Right. They have a buy-in to it, and so that's now good. Those warm moments. I mean, like, I was going to send her a text on Saturday, but I wake up to 4, 5, 6, 7 different messages on band wishing Antoinette a happy birthday. Right. And from the scholars, right? So I was just gonna send her a text, because I've been trying to keep, she was off on Friday and the Monday, I'm trying to give her a little space because we got a lot coming up, and so I'm like, want her to, get what she needs to be rejuvenated. But the scholars just went in, right? And I mean, and it was just, so when she talks about those heartwarming moments, it exists in that community because they're invested in it.
That's right. That's good. Thank you.
Others. Now hear this, like I tell my scholars, we love silence too, so we'll just sit here too. So whatever works for you in this moment.
I see that Pepper raised their hand.
Yes, go right ahead.
So I love seeing all the different ways in which you communicate with students, but I'm wondering how you determined a way to balance the desire to keep your students engaged and working towards their goals, but not overwhelming them with communication. Because I have a lot of students that I'll send out, notices in our various platforms, and they feel like they're getting barraged on all sides. I love the accountability challenge you had, Michael, but so many of our students, COVID's really sort of kicked them on their butt a little bit. They're living at home with family, so now there's new family obligations. They're working, a lot of them are working full time. Our summer program is GRE prep. They do their research during the academic year. And so I'm trying to figure out how to balance, communicating with them, but not making them dread whenever they see something from me.
Antoinette?
Yeah, I was about to say there's a couple of ways in which we do that. And I think the biggest part is the consistency, right? If we don't send anything else, what do they know they need to be looking for? And it's funny because those weekly emails we send from our McNair email, so it's not from a professional staff email. So I asked the ambassadors, I was like, hey, y'all, if I send from this McNair email, does that warrant a different message, right? And it's like, yeah, we need to pay attention to that, right? So I know for sure that they're looking at this particular email address as like, my attention needs to be here, right? So if it's something pertinent, that's really the way in which we communicate that. If it's just a simple reminder, sometimes we might utilize band, or sometimes we might ask our students to say, hey, you all asked about this. Be sure to share with your peers because you had a question. We know other people have questions. So really relying on the students to also be disseminators of communication, right? Instead of it all coming from us. And we say that because oftentimes they're having these side chats without us anyway, right? And we're fine with that. That's something that we encourage. And they sometimes feel more comfortable in that setting, asking those questions. And so that has been really, really helpful for them. And then we also asked, like at our last McNair family meeting, it was super eye-opening, right? I thought, because I sent, if people are missing stuff, I'll email them directly just to their separate email to say, hey, here's what I need. And I do that pretty consistently. Now that we're wrapping up, I'm just waiting for everything to be submitted, and then I'll do one final one. But the students were like, yeah, I know, getting those messages like, oh my gosh, I'm missing something. They were like, but I appreciate it. So even if they don't respond to it, it's like, I know I'm going to get this notification and I'm going to get to it at some point. Now, what ended up happening, right, is that our scholars tried to hide behind the email. And it's like, oh, if I don't say anything, if I don't do anything, they're not going to notice. And it's like, no, hey, I'm calling you. You okay? Like, what's happening, right? And so I think it takes us being really creative in terms of like having them know that we do see you, and with you all not interacting, that for us, that's a concern. And so for them to know that we care about them as a whole person first, that just makes that other communication about the important stuff way more natural and way less taxing for them. Because ultimately, I don't send this email about what I'm missing to make me feel good. I'm telling it so that you all know, here's what I need, and this is convenience. And when you get to it, let me know. But what we're also sharing is that you can't hide. If you're not able to make it, let us know when you can. And so they're communicating to us an adjusted deadline. Okay, cool. You won't hear from me until then, right? So that gets to pause the communication for another week or a week and a half, and they're essentially buying time. But then when that time comes, I'm going to come back because this is what we said, right? So really providing them the flexibility to create deadlines that work for them. Because as you mentioned, we got people working 2-3 jobs, or people who they're taking care of their family members because now they're home more often. And we recognize that. And so working with them in terms of what they need, and we tell them, if you don't tell us, we can't help you, right? So just letting them know that that open communication is really necessary.
And can I add to that, what's also important is that they also recognize when they became a part of the program about this, in this community, that there were 2 things that they signed up for, which was accountability and community. Those are 2 big things that we emphasize. And with the accountability part, it's also important for them to remember that the McNair program's goals have not changed for 30 years since we've been here. Now, when you signed up, your goals might have shifted, and that's okay. And we honor that, right? And we sometimes have to bless scholars on their way, right? Because their way isn't going the same way that we have sort of moved towards. So sometimes is that, but it's rarely, and I would say this, even this summer, that hasn't been the case. What it's been more of is helping them recognize sort of what Antoinette said, is that there is flexibility, but you have to communicate so that we know, because we're also human and we are staff who are trying to support the goals and the objectives of 30 individual students in our program. And so how can we do that if we don't know what's happening with you? And that encourages them, and they do reach out. And there's some we do gotta call in and check in on that more often than others. And it happens, and you know that. But I will say that I don't have to do that for 30. There's more like 5, maybe even 3 to 5 that we sort of alternate in having conversations with because of that. I hope that's helpful.
It is. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I did mention, someone did ask, and I did put in the chat that we will send out the PowerPoint. We've got some things we want to add to it, but then there are some other resources that we will sort of share with you as well. So some of the documents that we talked about will include links so that you can see them and download them for yourself to see. Because for us, honestly, it's been a mix of us pulling from different places. So some of this stuff we've created ourselves, and some of it we just saw other people doing some things, and we just said, okay, let's try this out, let's do it, and what have you. So we are not afraid or we're not the word isn't afraid. We're willing to share what we know and what we've experienced and what we've developed with you so that you can see it as well. Any other questions? Did and just get maybe using the reactions thing, did this answer a lot of your questions? Because I just want to make sure, because a lot of people are talking about, you know, how do we make the connections, best practices. Are there best practices you want to share? So if you want to, you know, use the reactions to let us know if we hit what you were looking for. And if not, you know, you can let me, you know, say that as well, because we really want to know and want this. We don't want you to leave here without some kind of resource to support you. Great.
Michael, can I ask out of curiosity if you are returning to face-to-face instruction this fall?
No, virtual. And I'm just gonna be honest, whether the university was, we were going to be virtual either way. So our staff had already talked through like what that would look like for us in the fall in general. And so all of our work is able to be virtual. And the university has moved 90% of the classes, but for our students, it's pretty much 100% of their classes, except for maybe some of the labs will be face-to-face, but yes. And we're not sure, like spring is the same question. We're not sure what's going to happen with that. How about you?
Well, I think that's why I asked is some of the issues we faced this summer is a lot of uncertainty because our institution is coming back face-to-face, but about 50% of the classes will be face-to-face, and we're actually we're counting towards that 50% face-to-face. So our program is back in the classroom, and yet with cases spiking now here, I mean, Colorado's been relatively stable, but the concern is we're going to just start back face-to-face and have another March where we have to then go back online, and the students aren't thrilled about that possibility. But I actually find it refreshing to know that your administration has already made the call, but ours keeps kind of, you know.
So here's what I would suggest. And I think we're sending it out on Friday. We are actually sending out an email. So Zaira, you want to talk about the email or the form that we put together for the scholars, since you worked on that?
The return to campus?
Yes.
Okay, lovely. So we actually made a return to campus to gauge what's going on, with our students as they're going back. It contains all basic questions like what, whether they know where their classes are going to be, whether they're online or in person, how many, their comfort level with going to their hybrid. Some classes are in hybrid in person. We wanted to gauge their comfort level. We even asked, events. Are you interested in having events? Would you be comfortable going if they were socially distant but in person? We asked them questions, really just gauging, the full, not just the academic and professional side, are you also working a job? But we wanted to gauge the full picture of our scholars. We wanted to see, this is uncertain. We're about to go try this whole semester thing again after, last semester, we pretty much had to go home halfway through. And we wanted to gauge what that full picture was. We wanted to see what people's general reactions were, what individual scholars had certain specific concerns. Because we say it over and over again, but this is unprecedented. We've never really seen this before. And we want to make sure that we're going in, not only prepared ourselves, but we want to make sure we have the care in place to soothe these worries, to soothe these concerns, to say, oh, one of our students is going to be working 2 jobs and they're worried about one of their classes being in person because that exposes them more. We want to know that. So we made a form so we would be on top of that, and so we would be able to provide the care necessary for those students.
And I will say to that, and this is as y'all see my sign that says dismantle white supremacy. I am clear. The one thing I am clear on is that our program is set to see our students be successful in the face of a system that wasn't created for them in the first place. And part of that for us is making sure that they are cared for. And that means that if I have to, and I'm glad our university, is moving in that way, but I stand on the fact that if I get this data back from my scholars who are first-gen, low-income, underrepresented students, and there's major concerns, and the university is then trying to have these online things or what have you, I am standing up for my scholars, even with this data that I have around what their needs are and what their concerns are. And so for us, in talking to students, like there's a lot of uncertainty and concern. There's students who we know have underlying health issues that are in our program. And so just knowing that, we made a decision for ourselves that there will be no in-person McNair meetings this semester, right? Whether the university was coming back or not, it was clear to us that this was going to be the case. And so we are arming ourselves in some way to make this argument if down the line they ask for something, but we still want to make sure that all of our students have what they need to be successful. Is that helpful? And what we can do too is we'll include in the email at least a PDF of the form that we use that we're going to send out so that you can sort of see the questions that we sort of ask the students as well. Yes, okay, yep. I just saw that, Pepper, so. So yes, we got you. Anything else? Yes, go ahead.
You want to mention about, I saw you had a question about student staff talking about communal care.
Hi. So this goes back, like Mr. Hunt just talked about it, and like what radical care is and how the McNair families kind of embodied that throughout the summer. Because I think it's been really important, and a lot of scholars, at least like even talking amongst ourselves in our separate chats, which we do have separate chats that we don't, like we talk as students. That's been really important because like when we have scholars coming from backgrounds where they are being systematically devalued, how radical it is to care for one another, how radical it is to say we're having restorative justice influence practices, and making sure those students get cared for in a time where we're really seeing that system kind of bare its teeth a lot more in very public ways. But that was, I think, just in like how important communal care is in keeping each other accountable and maintaining communication and dismantling white supremacy, and get out how that kind of ties everything together for us as a program over the summer, and how that's really helped a lot of students who keep going back to that fact and saying, like, it feels like a family. We talk to each other about like all of our problems. We like make jokes with each other. We're really tight knit, and that really, really helped beyond in like a lot more than I think put into words. It really helped us all like get through it.
Thank you. Well, that's all that we have for you all. Like, we want to say thank you for this was our staff, Antoinette and I sort of said, it's like, we have done like, and let me say it again, we've done a phenomenal job this summer in preparing, and we wanted to share this with you. Not to say that we have it all figured out, but to say that we know that we're moving in the right direction. And so anything that we can do to help support you in it, that's what makes it different. I don't mind tooting our horns, but I also note that to whom much is given, much is expected. And so we have done a lot, but we want to be of support to you. And that's why we thought this would be important as well. So feel free to reach out to us. You can email us individually and or our UMBC McNair account, McNair at umbc.edu. Actually, it's McNair S from McNair Scholar, McNair S at umbc.edu. If each of you, our presenters, if you would put your emails in the chat as well, so that if people want to connect, they can do so as well. All right.
Have a good evening, everyone.
All right. Thank y'all so much.
Bye.
All right.